The wind rolled across the plains of Wyoming like a living thing, carrying dust and sorrow together. Amelia Hart clutched the worn handle of her carpetbag and kept walking, boots crunching against the gravel road that led nowhere she wanted to be. Her eyes burned from more than just the wind. Behind her, the last traces of Smoke Ridge faded into the amber horizon. The town that had taken her hope, her savings, and nearly her pride. She didn't look back. She couldn't. 2 days ago, she had stood in front of the town church in a blue dress she'd sewn herself, waiting for a man who'd promised her a new beginning. A mail-order bride ad in a newspaper out of Cheyenne had led her here. He'd written sweet words, promised a home, a quiet life, and safety. But the man who stepped off that wagon wasn't the same one from the letters. He was twice her age, mean in the eyes, and drunk before noon. The ring he offered came with bruises, not vows. So she ran. Now the sun was sinking, painting the sky blood-red over the plains. She could hear coyotes somewhere in the distance, their cries lonely and sharp. Her heart pounded in her chest as she reached the crossroads. One sign pointed west toward the mountains, the other south toward a name she couldn't read anymore, the letters worn away by time and dust. Her stomach ached from hunger, her throat dry from the long walk. The hem of her dress was torn where it had snagged on barbed wire. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she couldn't go back. A faint rumble broke the silence behind her. Hoofbeats. She froze. Her fingers tightened around the handle of her bag as she turned, squinting against the sun. A rider was coming up fast, tall in the saddle, hat low, dust trailing behind like smoke. For a heartbeat, she thought it might be him, the man from the church, come to drag her back to Smoke Ridge. But as the horse slowed and the rider came into focus, she saw he was younger, lean but strong, his shirt rolled at the sleeves, and his revolver holstered low on his hip. His horse, a dark bay, snorted and stamped as he pulled the reins. "You lost, ma'am?" His voice carried over the wind, low, calm, but edged with something watchful. Amelia straightened her back. "No, sir. I'm just passing through." He studied her, his blue eyes narrowing beneath the brim of his hat. "Ain't much past here for 50 miles. You got folks waiting?" She shook her head. "No folks left." Quote. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind tugged at her torn dress, carrying strands of her brown hair across her face. The man's gaze softened slightly, but there was still that guarded look in his eyes, the kind worn by men who'd seen too much. He dismounted slowly, boots crunching on gravel. "Name's Colt McAllister," he said. "Got a ranch couple miles east. You look like you could use water." "I'll be fine." Colt tilted his head, glancing at her trembling hands and dust-caked boots. "Ma'am, the sun'll be gone in 20 minutes. You walk that road any farther, and you'll be buzzard bones by morning." Amelia hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to trust another man. Not after what she'd been through. But his voice carried something different. Steady, unhurried, almost kind. Still, she stepped back. "Thank you, but I don't need help." He sighed, running a hand across his jaw. "Didn't say you did. Just offering water." He turned and walked to his saddlebag, pulling out a canteen. He tossed it toward her gently. "At least take that." She caught it clumsily, nearly dropping it in the dirt. The first sip burned her throat, then filled her chest with relief. She nodded once, quietly. "Thank you." Colt watched her drink, then leaned against his horse. "You headed somewhere in particular?" "Anywhere but back," she said softly. He looked down the road where the horizon bled into darkness. "That's a long ride to nowhere." She started walking again, clutching the canteen like a lifeline. The sound of his boots followed. "You got no horse, no supplies, and no place to sleep," he said after a moment. "That ain't a plan, that's a death wish." She stopped, turning to face him, anger sparking through her fear. "I said I'll manage. I've been managing all my life." Quote. For the first time, he smiled faintly. "Then you're tougher than you look. I don't need your approval." Didn't offer it. They stood there, locked in the fading light, The runaway bride and the lone cowboy, two strangers caught between past and future. The wind carried the faint scent of rain, the promise of a storm brewing on the horizon. Colt's eyes shifted toward the dark clouds. "Storm's coming. My ranch ain't far. You can rest there till it passes." Amelia hesitated. She'd been fooled once by promises of safety, but something in his tone felt different, honest, almost weary. "I said, I'm fine." She turned again, tears stinging her eyes as she walked away. The wind whipped her dress, her boots slipping in the dust. Behind her, his voice came again, calm but firm, the kind that could stop a storm in its tracks. "Your road ends with me, Amelia." She froze. Her name. He shouldn't have known it. Her heart pounded as she turned to face him, his gaze steady, his hand resting on his horse's reins. "How do you know my name?" she whispered. Colt's jaw tightened. "Because I was the one supposed to meet you at that church." The wind fell silent. The world seemed to stop between them. The words hung in the air like a shot that hadn't yet hit the ground. Amelia's breath caught as she stared at the man standing before her. The dying light of the sun painted his face in gold and shadow, and in that silence, the truth began to unravel. "You!" she whispered, disbelief twisting her voice. "You're the man from the letters?" Colt nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Suppose I am, or was meant to be, but someone got to you first?" Amelia's knees felt weak. "Then who was the man who met me at the church?" Quote. He looked toward the horizon, his jaw tight. "My cousin Wade. We share the same last name. Guess he figured my bride would suit him better." Amelia's hand went to her mouth as the pieces clicked into place. Wade McAllister, the man who'd called her "my little dove" in letters that turned cold the moment she saw his eyes. The man who'd grabbed her wrist so hard she still bore the mark. Colt's gaze softened when he saw her trembling. "He tricked you. He stole those letters from me when I was working the cattle drive. I came back to find you'd already been claimed, and the preacher was waiting on your vows." Tears blurred her vision again, this time from anger. "He lied about everything, about you, about who he was." Colt nodded. "That sounds like Wade." She turned away, gripping her carpet bag tight, her heart pounding with a mix of fury and confusion. "Why didn't you come after me sooner?" Quote, "I did." His voice was quiet. "But by the time I found the church, you were gone. They said you ran off into the hills. I figured I'd never see you again." She let out a shaky breath. "And now you just happened to find me on this road?" He shrugged. "Wasn't chance. Been tracking you since dawn. Your footprints lead straight through my grazing land." Amelia's throat tightened. "So, what happens now? You drag me back to Smoke Ridge? Hand me to your cousin?" Colt's expression darkened. "Wade's no kin of mine anymore, and if I ever see him again, he'll wish he'd stayed clear of Wyoming." Quote. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind pushing through the grass. The storm clouds had moved closer now, heavy and dark, rolling like smoke across the sky. Lightning flashed in the distance, followed by the low growl of thunder. Colt took a step closer. "You can come with me till it passes. I ain't asking for trust, just sense. You'll die out here alone." Amelia hesitated, torn between fear and exhaustion. Every muscle in her body screamed for rest, but her pride refused to bend. Yet the memory of Wade's hands and that cruel smirk made her shiver. Finally she nodded, just for the night. He gave a small nod, helping her mount behind him. The warmth of the horse and the steady rhythm of its hooves carried them through the growing storm. By the time they reached Colt's ranch, the rain had begun to fall, soft at first, then in heavy sheets that turned the earth to mud. He led her into a sturdy cabin with a wide porch, its roof singing under the downpour. A fire already burned inside, filling the room with a warm glow. Amelia stood just inside the doorway, dripping and wary. Colt set his hat on the table and gestured toward the fire. "There's a blanket there. Dry yourself off." She obeyed silently, wrapping the coarse wool around her shoulders. Her eyes roamed the cabin, simple but well kept. A rifle hung above the mantel, a Bible on the table beside a coffee pot, a rocking chair near the fire worn smooth from use. "Your wife keep this place so tidy?" she asked, her voice low. He shook his head. Never had one. She turned, studying him. Then why send for a bride? Colt leaned against the table, arms crossed. Because a man can only eat beans alone for so many winters before he realizes silence ain't company. Despite herself, she smiled faintly. That's quite the proposal. He gave a half smile in return. I wasn't offering. Thunder rolled outside again. Closer now. The cabin walls trembled. Amelia sat near the fire, drying her boots. You said Wade stole your letters. That means you really did write them? Quote. Colt's eyes softened. Every word. You said in your ad you wanted a place to belong, someone honest. I figured maybe I could be that man. Her chest tightened. Then, everything I believed was a lie built on your truth. He nodded once. I'm sorry for what he did. She looked up at him, the flicker of firelight dancing in her eyes. And if I hadn't run, would you have come for me? I'd have torn through every town between here and Cheyenne till I found you. Silence filled the room, warm and heavy. For the first time since she'd left Smoke Ridge, Amelia felt safe enough to breathe. But peace never lasted long in the West. A sudden knock rattled the door, sharp and urgent. Colt's hand went straight to his revolver. Amelia's heart leapt. The wind howled outside, and a familiar voice shouted over the rain. Open up, cousin! I know she's in there. Amelia's blood ran cold. Wade McAllister had found them. The pounding on the cabin door echoed through the storm. Each thud shook the walls, mixing with the rain hammering the roof. Amelia's breath came fast, her fingers clutching the edge of the blanket as fear surged back through her veins. Colt stood still, his hand hovering near his revolver, jaw tight as carved stone. Stay back, he murmured without turning. Lightning flashed outside, casting Colt's silhouette in sharp light. Broad shoulders, calm stance, eyes steady as the thunder cracked. Wade's voice came again, rough and slurred. You think you can steal what's mine, cousin? That woman belongs to me. Amelia flinched at the word belongs. Her knees trembled, but she stood. I don't belong to anyone, she whispered. Colt's gaze flicked to her, a silent promise in his eyes. You're right. You don't. Another crash against the door made the hinges groan. Colt took a deep breath and stepped forward, pulling the door open with one sharp motion. Rain poured in, soaking the wooden floor. Wade stood there, drenched and wild-eyed, a pistol gleaming in his hand. Move aside, Colt, he spat. She's coming with me. Colt didn't move. You're drunk, Wade. Go home. This is my home, Wade shouted. You stole my land, my cattle, and now you want to steal my bride? Amelia's voice trembled. You forged his letters. You lied to me. Wade's glare snapped to her. You ungrateful little thing. I saved you from starving, and this is how you thank me? Colt stepped between them. You didn't save her, Wade. You trapped her. There's a difference. The air was heavy with tension. The rain drummed harder on the roof, thunder growling like a beast circling the cabin. Wade's hand tightened around his pistol. Last warning, Colt. Step aside. Colt's hand hovered near his own gun, but his voice stayed calm. You shoot me, Wade. You'll never leave this place alive. The two men stared at each other. Same blood, same stubbornness, but worlds apart. The fire crackled behind them, casting their shadows long and sharp across the walls. Wade's finger twitched. The gunshot shattered the silence. For a second, Amelia couldn't tell who'd fired. Then Wade stumbled backward, his gun slipping from his hand, landing in the mud outside. Colt stood firm, smoke curling from his revolver. Wade groaned, clutching his shoulder. You'd shoot your own kin? Colt's voice was cold. Family doesn't mean much when a man forgets how to be one. He stepped forward and kicked Wade's gun away, then nodded toward the road. Mount up and ride till sunrise. If I ever see you again, I'll finish what I started. Wade glared, but the pain and rain had drained his fight. He climbed onto his horse, swaying slightly, and rode off into the storm without another word. When the sound of hooves faded, the cabin fell into silence again, broken only by the hiss of rain and the pop of the fire. Colt holstered his gun and shut the door. Amelia stood frozen, staring at the blood on the floorboards. "You could have killed him," she said softly. "I know. You didn't." He met her gaze, his expression weary. "I've seen enough death to last 10 lifetimes. Didn't need one more tonight." Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear but relief. She stepped closer, her voice shaking. "I thought no man in this land had mercy left." Quote. Colt gave a faint smile. "Guess you found one that does." Quote. The storm began to ease, the thunder drifting farther away. He threw another log on the fire, its glow spreading through the room. For a long while, they just listened to the rain's soft rhythm against the window. Finally, Amelia spoke. "What happens now?" Colt glanced at her. "Now, you rest. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what you want." She lowered herself into the chair near the hearth, staring into the flames. "I don't even know anymore. I thought I was running toward a future. Turned out I was running from a lie." Colt knelt beside the fire, his voice low and certain. "Maybe you were running to something, just didn't know what yet." Her eyes met his. "And what's that supposed to mean?" He hesitated, then stood, his shadow stretching across the wooden floor. "Means, this road you're on, it ends here. With me." The words hung in the quiet air, the same words he'd spoken hours ago, but now they felt different. Not like a claim, but a promise. Amelia's lips parted, and a tear slipped down her cheek. She looked at the man before her, the one who'd written those letters with honesty, who'd stood his ground when others would have turned cruel, who'd faced his own kin to protect her. "Maybe," she said softly, "it's time my road finally ended somewhere safe." Colt smiled, a rare, quiet thing. "Then you found the right place." The storm broke outside, stars beginning to pierce through the clouds. Inside the small cabin, the fire burned steady, casting its warm light over two hearts that had wandered too long through loneliness and found each other by accident or fate. For the first time since stepping off that wagon in Smoke Ridge, Amelia Hart let herself believe that maybe the West still held a little mercy left for those who'd been broken by it. And in that cabin, as dawn crept over the horizon, she finally stopped running.